A brilliant student's life-saving research is stolen by her famous professor. Framed and destroyed, she vanishes. Years later, her perfect revenge unfolds when his stolen triumph becomes a global nightmare. This is academic poison. The scream wasn't human. It was the sound of shattering glass, 1,000 shards exploding outwards like frozen tears, mingled with the desperate electronic wail of the containment alarm. Inside the pristine level for biohazard lab at Viridian Dynamics, Dr. Alara Vance stood frozen for a split second, her gloved hands hovering over the now empty stand where flask number 7, her flask holding the concentrated viral vector for Project Ethelred, had stood moments before. The viscous, luminescent blue liquid, the culmination of 7 years of obsessive, secretive work, was now a spreading, deadly constellation on the sterile floor, inches from her sealed boots. The klaxon pulsed, red light bathing the scene in hellish strokes. Containment breach, level 4, pathogen. Her heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic bird trapped in a cage of bone and Kevlar-reinforced plastic. But beneath the primal surge of terror, beneath the immediate fear for her life and the catastrophic protocol unfolding around her, a different, colder sensation flickered. Not panic. Relief. The final piece was in play. Professor Alistair Sterling's empire, built on her stolen genius, was about to crumble, and he would never see her coming. The memory, sharp as the glass shards now littering the lab floor, cut through the chaos 5 years earlier. The air in Professor Alistair Sterling's university office smelled of old paper, expensive coffee, and the faint, cloying scent of his signature sandalwood cologne. Sunlight streamed through the tall windows, illuminating dust motes dancing. Above stacks of journals, Emily Chen, his brightest PhD student, practically vibrated with suppressed excitement. She clutched a thick binder, her knuckles white. Asterisk inside lay not just data but hope. Calyx, her baby. A revolutionary gene therapy vector, elegantly designed, shockingly efficient in preliminary simulations. It could potentially target and repair the defective gene responsible for Degas-Krieger syndrome, a rare, cruel childhood disease that slowly turned connective tissue to stone. Children trapped in their own hardening bodies. She'd poured her soul into this. Nights bled into days fueled by instant noodles and burning purpose. Professor Sterling. Emily's voice was barely a whisper, thick with emotion. I think I've done it. The Calyx vector. The simulations are beyond anything projected. Stability, specificity, delivery efficiency, it's all here. The in vitro results. She pushed the binder across his vast mahogany desk. Sterling, silver-haired, impeccably tailored, exuding an aura of intellectual royalty, didn't look up immediately. He finished annotating a paragraph in a manuscript, his fountain pen scratching deliberately. Finally, he lifted his gaze. His pale blue eyes, usually sharp and assessing, held a warmth Emily had rarely seen. "Emily, my dear," he said, his voice a rich baritone cultivated for lecture halls and grant committees. "You've been burning the midnight oil again, I see. Passion is commendable, but rest is also a scientist's tool." He reached for the binder, his fingers long and elegant. He flipped through the pages, his expression unreadable at first. Then, a flicker. Surprise. Genuine interest. Emily held her breath. Page after page of complex molecular schematics, flow, cytometry data showing unprecedented transduction rates, graphs demonstrating minimal off-target effects. Her heart soared as she saw his brow furrow in concentration, a slight nod here and there. This was it. Recognition, validation, this is. "Remarkably thorough, Emily," Sterling murmured, finally closing the binder. He leaned back, his fingers, a thoughtful look on his patrician face, the elegance of the design, particularly the modified capsid structure. "Truly innovative. You understand the gravity. The potential, completely." Professor Emily burst out, unable to contain herself. "If this works in vivo, it could change everything for DK syndrome. We could start primate trials within a year, human trials, maybe in 3. Sterling smiled, a slow paternal curve of the lips. "Ambition, I like it. But science, Emily, is a marathon, not a sprint. This requires meticulous verification, peer scrutiny, funding." He tapped the binder. "Leave this with me. I have connections at the National Institute for Genetic Medicine. Let me present the core concept. Gauge their interest discreetly. Get you the resources and visibility this deserves. It needs the Sterling name behind it to gain immediate traction, you understand? To protect it, protect it." Emily hesitated. For a fraction of a second, this was her life's work. But Sterling was a legend. Chair of the department, Nobel laureate in a related field, his endorsement was golden. His guidance had been invaluable. Of course, Professor," she said. trust warring with a tiny, unfamiliar knot of unease. "Thank you. Think nothing of it, my dear." Sterling waved a dismissive hand, already turning his attention back to his manuscript. "This is what mentors do. We nurture brilliance. Now, go. Celebrate. You've earned it." Emily floated out of his office. The future shimmered, bright and full of promise. Kellix would save lives. Her name would be associated with hope. She trusted Alistair Sterling implicitly. That trust was the foundation upon which her world would soon collapse. Weeks passed. Excruciating weeks. Sterling was suddenly elusive. Busy with the NIGM proposal, his assistant would say, reviewing the finer points. Emily's emails requesting updates went unanswered. Then, the bombshell dropped. Not privately to Emily, but in a packed university auditorium during prestigious annual Horizons in Genomics lecture. Emily sat in the front row, invited as his star student. He spoke of innovation, of hope for rare diseases. Then, he unveiled Project Prometheus. The slides flashed, her molecular schematics, her data graphs, slightly repackaged. The Kellix vector renamed Sterling Vector Alpha. He presented it as the culmination of his lab's years of foundational work, a breakthrough he'd personally spearheaded. He mentioned dedicated researchers genetically. Emily's name wasn't uttered once. The applause was thunderous, a standing ovation. Cameras flashed. Emily sat frozen, her blood turning to ice. Disbelief choked her. This wasn't oversight, this was theft. Grand, brazen theft. She confronted him afterward, cornering him backstage amidst the lingering congratulations. "Professor Sterling, that was Kellix, my work. You presented it as your own." Her voice trembled with fury and betrayal. Sterling's paternal warmth vanished, replaced by icy disdain. He drew her aside, his grip on her arm surprisingly strong. "Emily, control yourself," he hissed, his voice low and venomous. "This is a complex field. Your contribution, while appreciated under my guidance, was incremental. Project Prometheus represents a synthesis of decades of my foundational research. Your simulations were helpful, yes, but raw, unproven. Presenting them as a solo breakthrough, it would have been career suicide for you, naive." He released her arm as if touching something unclean. "Be grateful you were part of something significant. Don't let ambition cloud your judgment." Grateful. Emily spat, tears of rage blurring her vision. "You stole it. I have the notebooks, the original files, the timestamps." Sterling's smile was chilling. "Do you? Interesting. Because university security flagged unusual activity on your lab terminal last night? Attempted unauthorized access to my confidential Project Prometheus files. Trying to steal my data, perhaps to claim credit." He leaned closer, his scent suddenly cloying, suffocating. "You're talented, Emily, but troubled. Erratic lately. Obsessive. Pity. A formal inquiry could be damaging for everyone, especially a young researcher with unsubstantiated claims." The threat hung. Heavy accusation, blacklisting, the end of everything. He didn't wait for a response. He straightened his tie, the paternal mask slipping back into place for a passing dean. "Think carefully, Emily, about your future. Don't throw it away on delusions of grandeur." He walked away, leaving her. Standing alone in the echoing backstage corridor, the roar of applause for her stolen triumph still ringing in her ears. The world she knew, built on trust and passion for discovery, lay in ruins at her feet. Professor Alistair Sterling hadn't just stolen her research, he'd stolen her future, her reputation, her very identity as a scientist. The despair that followed was a black hole, swallowing her whole. But deep within that crushing darkness, a single cold ember ignited. Revenge. Not with fists or fury, but with the very thing he prized most: scientific triumph. She would destroy him with his own stolen success. The ember became Ilara Vance. Emily Chen was buried, a casualty of Sterling's ambition. Ilara was forged in the silent fire of betrayal. She vanished from academia, a ghost. Sterling's smear campaign worked flawlessly. Whispers of her instability and attempted data theft ensured no reputable lab would touch her. She was radioactive. She sold everything: her meager savings, her late father's watch, her mother's jade pendant, for a one-way ticket to a country with loose digital footprints and a desperate need for bioskills. Even off the books, she became a phantom. In the global pharmaceutical underworld, not developing drugs but auditing them, penetrating security for shadowy generics manufacturers, finding flaws in protocols for unscrupulous investors, she learned the dark arts of corporate espionage, data manipulation, and the intricate invisible flow of illicit research capital. It was grim, morally corrosive work, but it honed her mind into a razor. She absorbed everything about drug development, pipelines, regulatory loopholes, and the staggering financial stakes. She saw how easily data could be faked, buried, or stolen. She saw Sterling's face on magazine covers hailed as the savior of DK syndrome children. Sterling Vector Alpha moved rapidly through trials, fueled by his fame and the desperate hope of families. Each headline was a fresh stab, but Ilara, not Emily, felt it. Ilara channeled the pain into fuel. Her target wasn't Sterling directly, not yet. It was his masterpiece, Sterling Vector Alpha. She needed to understand it inside out, better than he ever could. Through her underground network, she acquired fragments, leaked trial protocols, confidential investor reports, even scraps of raw data Sterling's team carelessly left exposed. She rebuilt Kellex in her digital fortress, her stolen child, and she studied it with a lover's intimacy and an assassin's cold eye. She found its beauty, its potential. The potential Sterling was squandering in his rush to glory. But she also found its flaw, not a mistake she had made. A limitation inherent in the core design when scaled for mass production and long-term efficacy. A tiny instability in the vector's payload expression regulator. Under specific, sustained, cellular stress conditions that could arise in a subset of DK syndrome patients over time. The regulator could degrade, slowly, incrementally, leading not to correction, but to unpredictable, potentially catastrophic misexpression. Sterling's team, blinded by early success and the pressure of hype, had missed it. Their trials, skewed by patient selection and Sterling's influence, hadn't run long enough to trigger it. Ilara saw it, clear as day. The fatal crack in the foundation of his empire. Her plan crystallized, not to expose the flaw but to ensure it manifested spectacularly, globally. Too late for Sterling to stop it. She needed Sterling Vector Alpha to become the standard. She needed it deployed 2000s. And she needed to be inside the machine that would eventually break it. That's how Ilara advanced, with a meticulously forged CV highlighting obscure but useful experience in viral vector scale-up gained auditing a shoddy gene therapy plant in Eastern Europe. Landed a mid-level position in process optimization at Viridian Dynamics. Viridian, a massive but slightly second-tier pharmaceutical giant, had just won the fiercely contested contract to mass-produce Sterling Vector Alpha. Sterling needed their manufacturing muscle. Viridian craved the prestige and profits of the miracle cure. Ilira's job to help streamline production, to make it faster, cheaper, more efficient, to iron out any kinks. Her real job was to weave the poison into the tapestry. She worked diligently, brilliantly even. She identified genuine bottlenecks. She proposed elegant solutions that saved Viridian millions. She became trusted, indispensable, quiet, efficient, Ilara Vance. Nobody looked too closely at her past. Nobody connected her to the disgraced Emily Chen. Sterling visited the plant once, a grand tour for investors. Ilara kept her head down, her lab coat crisp, her expression neutral as the great man pontificated mere feet away. The urge to scream, to reveal herself was a physical ache, but she waited. Patience was her weapon. Her focus was flask number 7. Not the vector itself, but the complex nutrient broth crucial for activating the vector's payload just before final formulation. It was here, in the delicate dance of activation chemistry, that Ilara saw her opening. Sterling's original protocol, optimized for small-scale trials, was inefficient for mass production. Viridian was pushing for a faster activation cycle. Ilara, the trusted optimizer, was tasked with finding a solution. She found one. A modified catalyst compound, seemingly innocuous, that drastically sped up the activation process. It passed all initial quality controls. It saved crucial hours in the production line. Viridian management was thrilled. Ilara Vance received a commendation. What the controls didn't show, what Ilara knew from her intimate illicit knowledge of Kellex's hidden flaw, was that this catalyst subtly exacerbated the instability of the expression regulator. It didn't cause the flaw. Sterling's stolen design had baked that in. Her catalyst simply ensured the flaw would express itself faster, more reliably. Under the predictable stresses of real-world use in a diverse patient population, it was the accelerant on a slow-burning fuse. The Sterling Vector Alpha rolling off Viridian's lines, hailed as a triumph of modern medicine, carried within it the seeds of its own destruction and Alistair Sterling's downfall. Years passed. Sterling Vector Alpha produced efficiently. At Viridian was administered globally. Thousands of children with DK syndrome received the miracle cure. Early results were phenomenal. Children who were slowly turning to stone showed miraculous improvement. Mobility returned, pain faded, smiles blossomed on faces once frozen in despair. Sterling became more than famous. He became a saint. Awards piled up. Documentaries celebrated him. He bought a private island. He spoke at the UN. Emily Chen was a forgotten footnote, a minor blip in the glorious Sterling narrative. Alistair Sterling stood atop the world, bathed in adoration, utterly convinced of his own genius. Ilara Vance watched and waited. She continued. Her quiet work at Viridian, a ghost in the machine, she monitored the long-term follow-up data streams Viridian received from clinics worldwide. She saw the first scattered reports, anomalies, unexplained inflammatory markers. In a few patients at the 18-month mark, a slight regression in mobility for another at 24 months. Dismissed as statistical noise, unrelated complications, the vagaries of a complex disease. Sterling's team, riding high, ignored the whispers. The money kept flowing, the hype machine roared. Viridian ramped up production. More children received the vector. The clock ticked. Then, it happened. Not a trickle, but a floodgate bursting. At the 30 to 36-month mark for the earliest treated patients, the catastrophic failures began. Not a failure to work, but a horrifying reversal. The repaired connective tissue didn't just stop working, it began proliferating wildly. Calcification accelerated at a terrifying rate, far worse than the original disease. Tendons turned to brittle chalk, snapping under normal movement. Joints fused overnight into agonizing immobile stone. Organs, their supporting structures ossifying, began to fail. The miracle cure had become a curse, accelerating the very nightmare it was meant to stop. Children who had learned to walk were now imprisoned in rapidly petrifying bodies. The suffering was unimaginable. The outcry was instantaneous and global. Panic ripped through Viridian dynamics. Emergency board meetings ran 24/7. Lawyers descended like vultures. Regulators stormed the facilities, sealing labs and servers. The stock price evaporated overnight. Heads rolled. The CEO resigned, and the blinding spotlight of blame, fueled by grief-stricken families and a ravenous media, swung instantly towards the source. Professor Alistair Sterling, his flawless vector, his rushed trials, his arrogant dismissal of early concerns. His name, synonymous with hope days before, became a global byword for hubris and catastrophic failure. Sterling's folly, the calcification catastrophe. Sterling appeared on news channels, a broken man trying to defend the indefensible. His silver hair was disheveled, his famous poise shattered, an unforeseen interaction, a tragic anomaly. We followed every protocol. His words sounded hollow, desperate. The scientific community, once fawning, turned on him with vicious speed. Whispers of data manipulation in the original trials surfaced. Questions about the speed of approval, fueled by his celebrity, grew louder. Lawsuits, representing thousands of devastated families, were filed. Naming him personally, his university distanced itself. His awards were quietly rescinded. His private island was seized as collateral. The saint was now the devil. Ilara Vance watched it all unfold from her modest apartment. The news playing on a muted screen. She saw Sterling's face ravaged by guilt and terror, pleading his innocence to a world that only saw monsters. She saw the parents' anguish, the children's suffering. A complex wave washed over her cold satisfaction. Yes, the sweet taste of long-awaited justice for herself, but also a profound, aching sorrow. The children were innocent pawns. Her revenge, scientifically perfect, had collateral damage she hadn't fully allowed herself to contemplate in the depths of her anger. Sterling deserved to burn. But the children, their suffering was the bitter harvest of both Sterling's theft and her own poisoned solution. The victory felt ashen. The knock on her door was firm, official. 2 investigators from the Federal Drug Agency stood there, faces grim. Dr. Ilara Vance, we need to speak with you regarding process optimization protocols for Sterling Vector Alpha, specifically batch activation sequence Gamma7, which you oversaw. Ilara didn't flinch. She invited them in. She offered coffee. She knew this was coming. Viridian was throwing anyone and everyone under the bus. She was a mid-level technician involved in the flawed process, a scapegoat candidate. For hours she answered their questions. Calmly, precisely. She showed them her work logs, her optimization proposals, the approvals she'd received. She explained the catalyst modification clearly, dispassionately, highlighting its purpose, efficiency, cost-saving, meeting Viridian's aggressive production targets. She presented the initial QC reports showing it passed all standard safety checks. She emphasized she'd worked strictly within the parameters provided by Sterling's original team and Viridian management. She was the diligent employee, following orders, optimizing a process designed by others. She subtly steered them towards the pressure from above, the rush. She painted a picture of systemic failure, of profit overriding caution, of a process flawed at its inception by Sterling's rushed, celebrity-driven science. She didn't lie. She simply told the truth, selectively and strategically. The catalyst was her contribution, but it was Viridian's pressure and Sterling's fundamentally flawed design that created the disaster. She was a cog, not the engineer. The investigators took notes, asked probing questions, but found no evidence of malice, no hidden agenda in Alara Vance's meticulous records. She appeared exactly what she was. Supposed to be, a competent technician caught in a catastrophic system failure. They left, promising further contact. Alara closed the door, leaned against it. The apartment was silent. On the muted TV, Sterling was giving another tearful, rambling press conference. His world in ruins. His legacy was excrement. His fortune was gone. He faced financial ruin and the very real possibility of criminal negligence charges. He was a broken man, despised by the world. The cold ember of satisfaction glowed within Alara again, momentarily pushing back the sorrow. She had done it. She had orchestrated his downfall using the very thing he stole. He hadn't just lost his reputation. He'd witnessed his greatest triumph become his most horrifying failure, responsible for immense suffering. Far worse than prison. A week later, a plain envelope arrived. No return address. Inside was a single sheet of high-quality paper. The flaw you exploited. I see the pattern. The elegance of the destruction. It has your touch. I underestimated you. The cost, the children. God, forgive us both. A.S. Alara stared at the note. He knew. Somehow, amidst his ruin, he'd pieced it together. He recognized her signature in the disaster. A strange feeling, neither triumph nor fear, settled over her acknowledgement from the architect of her destruction. An admission of her victory laced with shared damnation. She held the note over the flame of her gas stove. The paper curled, blackened, vanished into smoke and ash. Emily Chen was truly gone. Alistair Sterling was finished. Only Alara Vance remained, standing in the wreckage she had helped create. The taste of revenge, both sweet and sickeningly bitter in her mouth. She had shattered the thief, but the echoes of the crash would haunt her forever. The silence in the apartment was deafening. The ghosts of the children Sterling Vector Alpha had failed whispered in the stillness. Justice, she realized with chilling. Clarity was rarely clean, rarely pure. It was a complex, often devastating equation. She had solved it, and the solution left her utterly alone. Thank you for listening to Academic Poison. If you were captivated by Alara Vance's calculated revenge, subscribe for more tales of justice served cold. New stories of resilience and retribution await. Hit subscribe and the notification bell. You won't want to miss what comes next.